You're listening to the Lanterns Radio Network. We are the network dedicated to empowering the individual, illuminating the truth, defending American exceptionalism, and inspiring future generations. Stay connected and get involved at lanterns.buzz for great radio. Get commentary and news of the day. Lanterns.buzz.
Good afternoon, everybody. You're listening to the HollowNet podcast here on the Lanterns Media Network from Phoenix, Arizona. I'm your host, Matt Holloway. Now, right now, it is Sunday, May the 6th, in the year of our Lord 2018. But really, for me, it's Friday, May the 4th be with you. Reason is, I'm up in the mountain camping, but that doesn't mean we don't have a ton to get through this week. So we've got this special pre-recorded HollowNet podcast for you here. We're also going audio only for our friends on Facebook. Don't worry, gonna have some fun things to show you online. Right now, we're about to dive into the Nobel Prize for President Trump. We're also going to discuss the other 4 presidents who have won this honor in the past. In addition to that, we're going to look at Drudge Report now, taking us to PJ Media, where Antifa has hoisted the president up in effigy and are discussing a full-blown rebellion against the forces of capitalism. All that and more here on the HollowNet podcast on the Lanterns Media Network. Stick around.
You're listening to the HollowNet podcast on the Lanterns Media Network. The new conservative resistance begins right here, right now.
I will build a great wall on our southern border, and I will have Mexico pay for that wall. Mark my words.
The American people are frustrated because their elected officials don't listen. When we're home on the campaign trail, we say we listen. And yet something about this Senate floor, something about Washington, D.C., I don't know if it's the water, something in the air, the cherry blossoms, but people get here and they stop listening to the American people.
What we witnessed here today in the Security Council is an insult. It won't be forgotten. It's one more example of the United Nations doing more harm than good in addressing the Israeli-Palestinian conflict.
My duty, and the sacred duty of every elected official in this chamber, is to defend Americans, to protect their safety, their families, their communities, and their right to the American dream. Because Americans are dreamers too.
I want the people of America to be able to work less for the government and more for themselves. I want them to have the rewards of their own industry. This is the chief meaning of freedom. Until we can reestablish a condition under which the earnings of the people can be kept by the people, we are bound to suffer a very severe and distinct curtailment of our liberty.
The chair recognizes the gentleman from Arizona. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Senators, members of Congress, Mr. Speaker, and Mr. President. You had one damn job. Seriously.
Incoming transmission.
Allied reinforcements have arrived from the west.
You're listening to TheHollowNet on Lanterns Media Network. The millennial conservative resistance begins here.
Yes, indeed, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome to the HollowNet podcast on the Lanterns Media Network. The new millennial conservative resistance does indeed begin right here, right now, with you. Let's dive straight into it. Now, if you're watching this on Facebook, YouTube, BitChute, anything else where you would ordinarily see my handsome, dashing, smiling face, today, unfortunately, that is not the case, because this is a pre-recorded session, recorded in the wee small hours, and I really don't think you need to see what I look like when I'm that dang tired. So, we've gone ahead and done the artsy image of me up on the screen there. I figure, shoot, if it works for Sargon of Akkad, why can't I pull that off? Even though Sargon Benjamin, he's not a bad-looking guy. I don't know why he does, his caricature sitting there in Babylon, or Akkad, wherever the hell that is. But anyway, I figured it's a cool format. I can steal it, borrow it for a show, and we'll see how that goes. But today we need to tackle something that's huge. It's bigly huge. Over the past couple of days, indeed, over the past week or so, the speculation has been abounding. Will President Donald J. Trump, Donald John Trump indeed, the comb-over himself, the Orange Bandit, the wild man from New York, will he actually be nominated for... Oh, scratch that crap, it already happened. Okay, will he actually win the Nobel Prize for his, quote, tireless work to bring peace to our world? We go to the telegraph.co.uk news. Donald Trump has been formally nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize for the U.S. president's efforts to solve the North Korean nuclear tensions. A group of 18 of Mr. Trump's biggest Republican supporters in the House of Representatives sent a letter to the Norwegian Nobel Committee, urging it to consider Mr. Trump for next year's award in recognition of his tireless work to bring peace to our world. Mr. Trump and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un are working out the details of a historic summit that could take place by the end of May or early June. Now, so many people on the left are just jumping all over this, and it is so strange how it went immediately from people jumping and screaming that, he didn't actually do anything, there's no reason for him to win the Nobel Prize, this isn't even on him anyway. You talk out of both sides of your mouth, because 2-3 weeks ago, the chorus was, oh my God, President Trump is going to cause World War III. He's yelling at Kim Jong-un. He called him names. Yeah, he did talk some tough there. He definitely threw his weight around a bit. It was not what I would call the most, what's the word I'm looking for, diplomatic approach to diplomacy, which I think is a bit funny in and unto itself. But effective, folks. Very, very effective. That you can't possibly deny. Not even for a moment. Because at the end of the day, here's where we sit. We have hostages of North Korea repatriated. We have a historic summit taking place between the president of South Korea, Moon Jae-in, and Kim Jong-un, where Kim Jong-un crossed over into South Korea, the first North Korean leader to do so since the Korean War. How can we ignore these things? How can we possibly look people in the face and say he had absolutely nothing to do with it? I mean, it's farcical in its nature to even think that the amount of pressure that President Trump applied was completely fruitless. I mean, check this out. Moon Jae-in, Trump, Nobel. You punch in the search string. South Korean president says Trump deserves Nobel Peace Prize. Reuters. So Moon Jae-in himself, the actual man who, I don't know, went and had the talks with Kim Jong-un. If you want to get on the side of the left on this one, the guy who should be saying at the top of his lungs, no, this was all me. No, he's sitting back and telling the world that President Trump absolutely deserves a Nobel Peace Prize for his work. I hate these auto-run commercials, don't you? But there's more than that. It hasn't just been President Moon Jae-in of South Korea. It's also been the foreign ministry of the Moon Jae-in administration in South Korea, jumping right out immediately and saying that President Trump's efforts were pivotal here. So I found this wonderful image on Facebook that I'm going to flash up for you on the screen here. There you go. This explains it perfectly. Trump's going to cause World War III. And then the reaction of the left. That's it in a nutshell, kids. So I want to take you for a quick walk through the 4 other presidents who have won this prestigious honor. They've brought home this prize to hearth and home to the United States and brought great glory to our nation. Notice the nice little Russian spin I put on that. Okay, fun fact for everybody playing Jeopardy. What U.S. presidents have won the Nobel Peace Prize? Oh, it's an illustrious group, I tell you. Illustrious, I say. Of course, anyone living in our generation cannot help but recall 2009, when the Norwegian Nobel Committee decided the Nobel Peace Prize would be awarded to President Barack Obama for, quote, his extraordinary efforts to strengthen international diplomacy and cooperation between peoples. They've attached special importance to Obama's vision of and work for a world without nuclear weapons. Notice when this was done, October of 2009. October 9, 2009. So that's about how long President Trump's been in office. Isn't that something? Now, when President Obama was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize, in the eyes of many, the only reason that he was awarded such was simply by virtue of being the first African-American elected president. Because for all other point and purpose, he accomplished all during the first 9 months of his presidency. During the first 9 months of his presidency, he was working hard to get Obamacare rammed down our throats, because it was that short while where he had dominance in both houses and had the full Democratic sweep going. That didn't last very dang long. And he had embarked on his quote-unquote apology tour. The Iran deal wasn't quite inked yet at this point. But still, the Nobel Prize Committee, that auspicious board, the prestigious group of people, saw fit to endorse his appeal that now is the time for all of us to take our share of responsibility for a global response to global challenges. Yeah, how'd that work out? Not very bloody well. So let's go along the list now. Who else? What American presidents, what great and grandiose leaders joined this prestigious group of presidential winners? We also have, what's this? Theodore Roosevelt. Teddy Roosevelt. My gosh. Isn't that something? Theodore Roosevelt. So, here's what the Nobel Committee actually has to say about Theodore Roosevelt. Imperialist and peace arbitrator. Theodore Roosevelt, President of the USA, received the Peace Prize for having negotiated peace in the Russo-Japanese War in 1904 and 1905. He also resolved the dispute with Mexico by resorting to arbitration as recommended by the peace movement. So they could have stopped there. I mean, I'm not a huge Roosevelt fan. I have a buddy of mine, Will. He is a self-proclaimed bull moose progressive, big fan of Roosevelt, and he was probably pretty happy about this. And I agree. President Roosevelt, for his efforts in bringing the Russo-Japanese War to a close and resolving the dispute with Mexico, that's actually statesmanship. That is peacemaking. That is what the Nobel Peace Prize is for. But no, they go on. Roosevelt was the first statesman to be awarded the Peace Prize, and for the first time, the award was controversial. The Norwegian left argued that Roosevelt was a military-mad imperialist who completed the American conquest of the Philippines. Swedish newspapers wrote that Alfred Nobel was turning in his grave, and that Norway awarded the Peace Prize to Roosevelt in order to win powerful friends after the dramatic dissolution of the union with Sweden the previous year. So, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to see that this was definitely not the last time that a Nobel Peace Prize was awarded questionably. And if President Barack Obama's award of the Nobel Peace Prize didn't convince you enough, wait till you hear these two. Stick around. We'll be right back. You're listening to the HollowNet podcast on the Lanterns Media Network. You can follow us on Facebook, facebook.com/HollowNet. Tweet at TheHollowNet. Find us on hollownet.lanterns.buzz. And as always, TheHollowNet.com.
Playing outlawed tunes on outlawed pipes.
Listening to the HollowNet podcast on the Lanterns Media Network. The new conservative resistance begins right here, right now.
Allied reinforcements have arrived from the west.
You're listening to TheHollowNet on Lanterns Media Network. The millennial conservative resistance begins here.
That's right. The new millennial conservative resistance does indeed begin right here, right now with you. You're listening to the HollowNet podcast on the Lanterns Media Network. Want to give a great big shout out to the band you just heard, Tartanic. That's right, Tartanic. Pipes and drums, pipes and drums, playing some medieval rock and roll for you there. Big shout out to Adrian, frontman of Tartanic there, gave me explicit permission to use that audio before YouTube stomps my freaking brains out. They asked us to pirate that crap, alright? So, fulfilling my absolute contractual verbal obligation to a band I really enjoy. Make sure to check them out. That's Tartanic, TARTANIC.com, Tartanic.com. Find them on Facebook, Twitter, iTunes, SoundCloud, everywhere that great music is had, and there is nothing better to red light blast somebody with than the sound of bagpipes. Alright, now we're coming back. We just talked about Theodore Roosevelt winning the Nobel Prize, and we have two more presidents who really set the precedent. Sorry, I don't have a rim shot, but that was pretty close. Who really set the precedent for how low we can go when it comes to the bar of the Nobel Society. Next up, who do we got? The Nobel Peace Prize for 1919, Thomas Woodrow Wilson. That's right. President Woodrow Wilson, who reigned during the American involvement in World War I, gave us the Internal Revenue Service, the Federal Income Tax, the Alien and Sedition Acts, and also the first movie ever played in the White House, which was a very racist piece called The Birth of a Nation, which extolled the virtues of the KKK. Oh man, this guy has to be the most peaceful person in recorded history. Nobody could possibly deserve the Nobel Peace Prize more than... No, couldn't keep a straight face. Couldn't do it. That hurt. Ugh. Now, you want to talk about some of the worst progressives of all time, we have to talk about Woodrow Wilson. Woodrow Wilson was arguably the father of the League of Nations, and that is the main reason that he won the Nobel Peace Prize. There was a disagreement about Wilson in the Nobel Committee. A majority decided to give him the prize. The main reason is because the U.S. Senate refused to ratify the League of Nations. Man, I wish they would have stuck to their guns on that crap. We wouldn't be stuck with the United Nations and all that associated BS. President Woodrow Wilson was an abject and complete failure as a president and as a world leader and as a statesman. He has almost single-handedly been responsible for the vast majority of ills the American people have suffered over the last century. As I said, the income tax, the Federal Reserve banking system, all thanks to President Woodrow Wilson. Never mind how badly Armenia got the shaft after World War I, when they were promised a full country under the 14 points initially going into the agreement for peace at Versailles, and were promptly forgotten. Whew. It just takes your breath away how the most undeserving sorts can win the Nobel Peace Prize. So do I think that President Trump could actually get the Nobel Peace Prize? You know, damn it, I think he might. The question is, God, does he really want it? Do you really want to be counted among people like Woodrow freaking Wilson? And wait, it gets better. 2002 Nobel Peace Prize winner, former President Jimmy Carter. Awarded for his decades of untiring effort to find peaceful solutions to international conflicts, to advance democracy and human rights, and to promote economic and social development. President Jimmy Carter. Because God, that 1979, was it a small hostage situation in some backward country? No, it was the 1979 hostage situation in Iran. Yeah, that didn't get resolved until after President Ronald Reagan was elected because the Ayatollah wanted to diss him so bad that he released them immediately afterward. At least that's what a lot of people will have you say. I think the Ayatollah honestly didn't think that Ronald Reagan was going to put up with this crap. That's just me. Just spitballing here. But yeah, President Jimmy Carter, widely regarded as one of the greatest failures of a president in American history. This is the guy who presided over the fuel shortage in the 1970s and, of course, sat back and did absolutely nothing while a group of religious fundamentalists, extremists, took over what was once the stalwart Western ally of Persia, under the Shah and transformed into one of the most implacable enemies the United States has ever faced. Way to go, Jimmy! Between Jimmy Carter and Woodrow Wilson, I don't think two presidents in United States history have screwed up the Middle East worse between them. Although, to be perfectly honest, the Iranian situation, as much as I love him, Dwight D. Eisenhower gets a lot of credit for that because the Anglo-Iranian Oil Company, also known as BP, managed to convince 10 Downing Street way back in the 50s that they needed help in putting down the rightfully elected government of Iran, which just happened to be a president we didn't really agree with, and we kind of helped. So that's a case where there's a screw-up on the right, and it was a significant miscalculation, exacerbated by the blundering, kludgy politics of Jimmy Carter, resulting in the culmination of the Ayatollah's seizure of power in Iran and eventual takeover. So, the two Nobel Prize winners, really two out of the four were just abject, ridiculous failures. One actually did achieve peace in his time, but was also a major progressive imperialist. Teddy Roosevelt, love him or hate him, everybody has their Roosevelt stage where they're enamored with the bull moose. Well, at least everybody who's a political, like I am. But, Teddy at least has his good parts. Then you have Wilson, who's just an absolute crapstorm. Carter, who's just blitheringly incompetent. And then President Barack Hussein Obama, who got a Nobel Peace Prize ostensibly for frickin' being there. Way to go, you got elected. Bravo. Nice done. Much greatness. Huge impress. They literally gave him a Nobel Peace Prize for crap that he wanted to accomplish, which in retrospect, he didn't. Could I please get the Edward R. Murrow Award for broadcasting because I'm really thinking about doing it? Or how about just the Pulitzer? I'll take the Pulitzer right now because I'm really, really thinking of writing one of the most impactful articles in the history of mankind. I think I can do it. I have a vision of it because that's what they did for President Barack Obama. They gave him a Nobel Peace Prize for his vision. I mean, seriously. For his extraordinary efforts to strengthen international diplomacy and cooperations between the people. And then when you go to the actual prize announcement itself, for the press release, okay, here we go. We have sought to stimulate precisely the international policy and those attitudes for which Obama is now the world's leading spokesman. The committee endorses Obama's appeal that now is the time for all of us to take our share of responsibility for a global response to global challenges. So he can make a decent speech. He didn't accomplish really any of this. The nuclear threat of Iran wasn't assuaged by the nuclear deal, and that didn't happen for years after the Nobel Prize was awarded to him. If anything, the situation has worsened. With the past week, President Benjamin Netanyahu revealing to the world secret captured Iranian documents showing they have demonstrably betrayed the nuclear agreement. So, let's recap. President Obama gets it for nothing. President Carter is blitheringly incompetent. President Wilson, abjectly evil. Did I mention racist and evil? And President Roosevelt actually managed to get it for making peace. I don't know. If I were Trump, I think I would do exactly what he did with the White House Correspondents' Dinner. Smile, shake his head, and sit this dance out. Tell the Nobel Committee, thanks. but shove it directly up your ass. That's just me. Take a quick break. You're listening to the HollowNet podcast here on the Lanterns Media Network. Stick around. Still got a couple of things we want to go through here. Going to the Drudge Report. And Antifa in LA declaring open war on the capitalist world. That next.
You're listening to the Lanterns Radio Network. We are the network dedicated to empowering the individual, illuminating the truth, defending American exceptionalism, and inspiring future generations. Stay connected and get involved at lanterns.buzz for great radio. Get commentary and news of the day. Lanterns.buzz.
I see people coming together not for divisiveness of party or for dichotomy of thought, but for unity in principle. In the principles that founded our nation, that all men are created equal and are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Today, ladies and gentlemen, those principles are under the sternest attack that we have seen in many generations. It has become a crime in this nation nearly to express a difference in opinion from what is held by your party to be doctrine, from what is purported by the media to be truth. We have an opportunity to reach out to our fellow Americans regardless of their creed and regardless of their political inclinations, and unite as Americans, not as Republicans or as Democrats, as liberals or conservatives, but to unite around the principles that have guided this nation so well. I've covered a lot of stories, but the story that remains untold is the story of America in the 21st century, when we choose to turn back the tide against progressive socialism, when we choose to embrace the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, and the Bill of Rights, when we remember what it is to be Americans. And that principle will not die as long as there is one man, one woman, one child who looks defiantly into the night and says, I am free.
You're listening to the HollowNet podcast on the Lanterns Media Network. The new conservative resistance begins right here, right now.
Allied reinforcements have arrived from the west.
You're listening to the HollowNet on Lanterns Media Network. The millennial conservative resistance begins here.
Yes, indeed, my friends. The new millennial conservative resistance does indeed begin right here, right now with you. You're listening to the HollowNet podcast on the Lanterns Media Network. Anywhere you can find us, we're on iTunes, TuneIn, iHeartRadio app, Podcast Addict, TheHollowNet.com, of course, HollowNet.lanterns.buzz, YouTube, BitChute. Yeah, don't forget about the BitChute. Anywhere, including Spreaker, the program I'm recording this on. Don't know why I don't mention that first. Anyway, so we're back here from break. We got a little bit left to get through here, so stick around. We're taking it to the LA Antifa. According to PJmedia.com, LA Antifa group hangs Trump in effigy, calls for revolutionary violence against the capitalist state. Apparently, the Los Angeles Red Guards on May Day in 2018 were involved here. An Antifa group in Los Angeles celebrating May Day by holding a small march, hanging a Trump effigy, and advocating for revolutionary violence against the capitalist state in order to create real political power. Oh, well, not only do I expect those guys to try something like this,
I'm counting on it!
The reason that I say I'm counting on it is because this is when the left tips their hand too far. When they say things like, we're going to launch revolutionary violence against the capitalist state, that's when most Americans wake the heck up and realize these guys are not just sitting on the street corner holding up a sign for Bernie Sanders and hoping that we're going to get some socialized medicine. No, folks, we are looking at violent revolutionaries in some cases. I'm not telling you that every single Bernie bro out there is going to turn into a straight hot-blooded Bolshevik who wants to turn America into the next Pravda state. No, I'm not going to tell you that, even though it's probably true with a good percentage of them. What I am going to tell you is that there are groups that are out there, such as these LA Red Guards, say we must carry out military actions against the enemies of the people. And you know who the enemies of the people are to these guys? You. If you're listening to this program, if you have a free thought in your head, if you have any inclinations toward classical liberalism, the Constitution of the United States, the Republican form of government, freedoms and protections for the individual against the will of the collective, then these guys want you either dead or submitted. They want you to submit to their power. Now, it goes on to say, the Red Guards is a Maoist group that hopes to duplicate in the United States the anarchy and terror of Chairman Mao's Red Guards inflicted on China during the Cultural Revolution of the 1960s and 70s. This group also identifies as anti-fascist and has cells throughout the United States. The United States today is starting to look like Europe in the early 1930s, the very early 1930s. We had two camps. One of the first things that the Nazis did in Germany was take out the communists, was take out the socialists, because they didn't want people competing and dividing out the left. Now, these guys are quote-unquote anti-fascist. God, they sure act fascist, don't they? But they're instead going for the opposite effect. The reason why this Red Guard group is anti-fascist is because they are the group that got taken out in Germany prior to the Third Reich's rise. The first thing the Nazis did was strike down the communists and the socialists. Why? Because they would divide the people's loyalties. There can only be one nanny state. There can only be one group that swoops you in, takes you comfortably into their arms, and says, I will protect you from the bad people. I will give you the food you need and a roof over your head. You can't have two groups doing that. No. So these groups are looking to push the opposite way and take everyone who doesn't agree with them with them. Hundreds of thousands of leftists throughout the world mobilized for the annual International Workers' Day on May 1st to advocate for various social justice causes and celebrate communism. Yep, that's a thing that happened right here in the United States, folks. Complete with the perfunctory hanging of President Trump in effigy. Yep, that's here in the U.S. Open your eyes. And here's one of the things that makes that more important. We go to Bloomberg Quint. High Court balances at stake as Kennedy retirement talk heats up. After 30 years of pivotal decisions on the U.S. court, Justice Anthony Kennedy is about to make his biggest one yet. For the second straight year, Kennedy, who is now 81 years old.
Holy shit, dude.
Holy crap indeed, Kyle. 81? Whew. Okay, second straight year, Kennedy 81 is the focus of retirement speculation as the court approaches the late June end of its term. A retirement by the court's swing justice would give President Donald Trump his second Supreme Court vacancy to fill before a Republican Senate majority goes on the November election ballot. It would also drop a political bomb into what is already one of the country's most divisive eras since the Civil War. So we need to pay close attention here, folks, because if President Trump can manage to install another conservative justice into the Supreme Court, a real rock-ribbed conservative justice, this could tip the balance of power in the United States for easily the next 30-plus years. Time on the bench is long. And Justice Kennedy, while ostensibly one of the more conservative, has been a swing vote. I wish nothing but good for the man. You know, he's made some rulings I agree with, some rulings I disagree with. But, goodness. Can you imagine the firestorm that the left is going to put up if he resigns? That is going to become their rallying cry going into 2018 and 2020, is that they cannot allow another conservative justice on the Supreme Court. So part of me hopes that he does decide to call it quits before that election comes about. If not, it's going to get ugly fast. Because you will see just absolute daily battles in the halls of Congress. Obstructionism, the likes of which we've never seen in an already do-nothing Congress. I mean, the very nature of it could make President Trump a lame duck president going into the last 2 years of his term. Not something that we want to happen, folks. Because whether you like President Trump or you dislike President Trump, we must have a functional legislature in order to do business as a nation. And a deadlock over a Supreme Court nomination is just not what we need right now. Now, taking the news local to Arizona, the Red for Ed movement. Red for Ed. As in Ed, Ed, and Eddie. A rather decent cartoon series that I caught a couple of times as a kid. Red for Ed has drawn its close with the Arizona legislature finally adjourning sign day, so in other words, ending their entire term for this year. And Arizona is never going to be the same. Why? Because Arizona was cowed by the teachers and by the Educators Association. Teachers went back to school today, and they were met with displays of affection from their students. Students calling their teachers heroes. AC Central reported as Red for Ed walkout ends, teachers line up to welcome students back into class. Now, the income tax plan that passed, the budget plan, I should say, that passed, is along the lines of what Governor Ducey proposed, which is the 20 by 2020 pay raise for teachers. Increased budgets, going toward increasing in-classroom expenditures and going back up to 2008 funding levels. They didn't get everything that they wanted, though. They didn't get everything that they wanted. But, as a very important band once said, you can't always get what you want. But if you try sometimes, you just might find that you get what you need. So go to Mother Jones. Mother Jones says, Arizona's Red for Ed teachers movement just won its first big battle. And they say, but now we must win the war. Arizona teachers called off their week-long Red for Ed walkout, the largest in a recent wave of teacher strikes across the country, after Governor Doug Ducey signed a budget bill Thursday that gives educators a 20% pay raise over 3 years. More than 50,000 teachers and supporters marched on the state capitol to protest low pay and subpar funding for classrooms. While the outcome fell short of the original demands, which included salary structures and halting tax cuts until lawmakers raised per pupil school funding to the student national average, Arizona Education Association President Joe Thomas and National Education Association President Lily Eskelsen Garcia said in a joint statement that educators would return to school knowing they had achieved something truly historic. When we started this movement, Arizona educators pledged to keep fighting for the schools their students deserve until the end, and we were true to our word, they said. We should take pride in what we've accomplished and in the movement that we have created together. The political movement that they created together, as typified by a political school bus picking up and dropping off Red for Ed teachers. It's just getting a little bit difficult to take seriously the demands of the left. It really is. When the Democrats are getting ready for a coordinated takedown of Governor Ducey, yet we're faced with this image, which I'll pull up for you right here. David Garcia for governor here in the state of Arizona. And yes, those are Red for Ed protesters piling out of a David Garcia for governor bannered bus. And over again, the mainstream media in the state of Arizona tells us it's not a political movement. It's about education. It's about fairness for the teachers. It's about getting them great pay. And then one of the demands is that the Arizona legislature refuse to reduce taxes until the national funding level per student is reached. Which, how in the name of God is that a reasonable measure of the quality of education in the state of Arizona? That's not measuring the quality of education or the quality of the facilities. That's measuring how much damn money you throw at it. That's all. And here we see the political motivations of the Red for Ed movement. Plain for the world to see. But the world turns a blind eye. Because it's a heartwarming tale. The teachers banded together and David slew Goliath. Not quite. Let's talk about the parents who had to miss a week of work. And how they're going to make their mortgages and rent payments this month. Or if they didn't have to miss a week of work, they had to put their children into daycare or into babysitters. Fast, quick, and in a dang hurry. Let's talk about those families that were affected. The parents that were affected by Red for Ed. I saw a Purple for Parents movement spring up surrounding State Representative Kelly Townsend, among others, over the past weekend, which I thought was a step in the right direction because so much is being said, fighting for the teachers, fighting for the students. What about fighting for the families? This isn't fighting for the students. This is fighting for two things. This is fighting for a bloody paycheck, which I will come out in front and say the teachers are underpaid, but this is not the bloody well way to do it. And number two, fighting to give Doug Ducey a black eye going into an election year. Spare me your platitudes. Oh, and I don't believe for a second that Red for Ed is done. Not for a second. You better bet your bottom dollar they're going to rear their ugly head again come November. It'll be time for the rest of their demands to be met. Just in time for a new governor to be elected. And should Arizona fail to hold against this assault, then we're going to see the unprecedented growth that Arizona has been undergoing, the coffers flush with new tax income. All of that is going to go away like that. Because right now we are just stabilizing from the mire that Janet Napolitano sunk us into, that Jan Brewer, despite herself, did her best to get out of. But only now, and don't get me wrong, I'm not running the Doug Ducey fan club here. Only now have we started to pick up our heads and look around. Only now is the job growth really coming to Arizona. Is the tax revenue increasing? So is there money there to pay the teachers? Yes. Is there money there to pump an extra $1 billion into the school system? Not so sure on that. But I can tell you this. You give a mouse a cookie, gonna ask you for a glass of milk. So, wrapping things up here from the beautiful HollowNet studios in the West Valley of Arizona. Should President Trump get his Nobel Prize? I'd say probably. He should also probably give it back. We need to keep our eyes on these educational uprisings happening throughout the state, and also on these Antifa Red Guard protests that are happening all over the country. Why? Because these two are going to start to combine. Right now, they're coincidental in some cases, but I would not be shocked if we saw these two fronts come together to lash out at the capitalist society and at our conservative republic, at least as it stands presently. What's more, as we go into Cinco de Mayo, take great care. Because now, according to The Blaze, Gonzaga University warned their students against cultural appropriation on Cinco de Mayo, and said the holiday has been abused by non-Mexican individuals. Campus Reform obtained an email from the VP of Student Development, Judy Biggs. Said, spring has finally arrived in Spokane, and this weekend marks the official end of classes at Gonzaga University. Saturday, May 5th, Cinco de Mayo is a holiday that celebrates the date of the Mexican Army's 1862 victory over France at the Battle of Puebla. It's a relatively minor holiday in Mexico. However, in the United States, Cinco de Mayo has evolved into a commemoration of Mexican culture and heritage, particularly in areas with large Mexican-American population. It continued, at some college campuses, including our own, students create theme parties and dress in costumes that are insensitive and offensive to Mexican-American and, more broadly, Latinx culture. Folks, apparently we can no longer celebrate Cinco de Mayo, Chinese New Year, or really any other ethnic holiday without worrying about cultural appropriation now, can we? Sad state of affairs. Well, I'm going to go spend my Cinco de Mayo up on a mountain. That way I can be as far away from the downtown Scottsdale pub crawls as possible. In the meantime, from Phoenix, Arizona, I'm your host, Matt Holloway. Good night. God bless you, and God bless the United States of America.
You're listening to TheHollowNet on Lanterns Media Network. The millennial conservative resistance begins here.